Were you counting down?
I was. I wanted to get something for the poor person that has to edit this thing. I wanted to give them something for 30 seconds to listen to. So I provide all sorts of entertainment.
That's cool.
Well, here we'll cut take two.
Podcast.
What's up to all our sidekicks and henchfolk out there in the Geek Nation? My name is Noel. I am not JD, but I will be the host of tonight's CultPop podcast live stream, aka spoiler alert, episode 768, where we review last week's comics, not all of them, because that's Herculean and not worth the effort, but just a handful, and then talk about other pop culture things. We are located outside or out of our how about our base of operations is Johnny Destructo's Hero Complex, located at 4327 Main Street, Philadelphia, PA. A super rad shop which caters to nerdy and nerd-adjacent individuals. You don't have to be a full nerd. You could be part nerd or slight nerd. Of all shapes and sizes except jerks. No jerks are allowed in the store. There's signage. It's a whole thing.
Wait, what about the people who are just not nerds? But
No,
they're
they,
nice.
they absolutely cannot come in.
They can't go in.
I feel like nerd-adjacent kind of
It's
covers
everyone
that.
else. Everybody in the world. Yeah.
I mean, you're likely very close to, if not proximity, but also emotionally, somebody that has partnered in them.
That's true. And if they walk into the store accidentally, JD could count as that person in proximity wise.
Yeah,
That's true. Yeah.
What is it? 6 feet? But yeah, as long as you're
adjacent.
Joining me tonight is Brian Lieb.
Hi.
Down there, as well as Rob Patey. AKA
Hello.
Are we still doing Optimus Douche?
We're not, because Optimus Douche hasn't been around for 4 years now.
Now it's just Rob.
Now it's just Douche. So I used to write for Ain't It Cool News under the handle Optimus Douche because I knew that would get a hell of a lot more play than Rob Patey. It is a decision I ultimately regretted after about 5 years when I realized my normal name would suffice, and then people at work started finding my articles and going, "Oh, that's nice, yeah." And I used to be on the the old Pop Tarts podcast that is now CultPop podcast. Yes, so I did that for 10 years.
I haven't read any of your old stuff in a long time. Did you, under the pen name of OD, have a different tone?
Oh yeah, I lived up to the name. It was my catharsis each week. I was sitting at my desk writing for the 7,000th time the most scalable solutions for your network architecture. And I go, I'm going to kill myself if this is all I leave behind on this earth. And so I submitted a review to Ain't It Cool News, and they said, yes, we love it. And it started a whole 10-year ride of cons and comps and ultimately a complete burnout of the medium.
I only, which we're going to touch on a little bit, I only got as far as writing for Broken Frontier for like 3 or 4 years. But that's a hoity-toity. I don't know if anybody's familiar with BrokenFrontier.com. They actually still exist. But they exclusively just do like indie comics and European comics now. When I was there, we were reviewing all Marvel and DC and stuff, and they were like really sinking in. But then it's like, this is our niche. If you don't sound like this,
roll with it. And you have to. I mean, Ain't It Cool had been around since 1996. So, I mean, anybody who does web marketing out there will know what I'm talking about when you talk about domain authority and page authority. Ain't It Cool, even though it was a piece of shit site and looked like it had never changed code since 1996.
It still does.
It's still, the rating of it on the internet is so hot that I would say I had more followers in industry than I had fans. Like if I look at my Twitter, it's I still talk to Dan Didio all the time, right? And we still kind of throw DMs back and forth. So it was the industry. Hi, JD. It was more the industry that paid attention to that site than necessarily the fan base did.
Yeah, and you know what? You could probably make an argument that the industry pays more attention to like Bleeding Cool than it does CBR right now. Like CBR is CBR, or the kinds of CB, like Newsarama, what has become Newsarama, or it's Games Radar Newsarama. It's basically just announcements and press releases.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say most of the sites at this point now are bought and sold, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about Ain't It Cool is that Harry didn't really give a shit about us beyond just the value we provided for search, and he really left us alone to our, off to our little niche. That was how we started the podcast. Was JD was kind of doing his thing with movie reviews at the time, and then we said, let's, bring these two worlds together. JD's podcast prowess along with Ain't It Cool, because Ain't It Cool had no multimedia on it at the time. It's like, this is like 2010 I'm talking about. It's not like multimedia should have been out of the question. It was just nobody cared. So, we got to have kind of a free reign of things, and we didn't have to prostitute our souls like you have to do on CBR and all the rest.
I like CBR's though. Brian Cronin's articles I'm a big fan of. He's got like comics history and musings, and
cool.
it's separate from like, here's what's going on now. It's like, what was the first time this happened, or legends revealed, that kind of thing.
It's kind of like talking to Len.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? That's just it. Like I spoke broadly. I think that those sites serve a purpose, but the actual like click purpose is basically advertisement for publishers. But there's no space really, and it sucks that the best version of the space is filled by Bleeding Cool. There's no space for just real-time discussion and or news. Like I love the articles about people hiring and firing at publishers and the hierarchy and the structure and initiatives for the whole line. I love that stuff. That's not covered anywhere else because it's not a marketing push.
You like the business of it. So,
yeah.
I mean, and that's what we were able to do with the Ain't It Cool reviews was, the editor. I love the editor, even still to this day. He just did a podcast with us last night, but he was very lax. He was not a very stringent editor. He just kind of gave us all free reign of publishing. We would throw in the business. I mean, they were half opinion pieces as much as they were, here's what happened in the comic. Because again, you get the press releases. Who gives a shit? You can just cut and paste what happened in the comic.
Yeah.
I think Mars Comics said, that's why we are here. I assume referring to that kind of comics industry discussion. There we go. News and info.
Wow.
Awesome. Excellent.
That's like it's such a hole in your knowledge then.
Yeah, we're pretty light on news.
No, but I love the speculation too. I love
it.
Speculation about like right now, like there's a rumor Jonathan Hickman is going to write something for Marvel, but we don't know what it is. I love the rampant kind of it's positive speculation. It's not like who's going to get fired and who sucks and who's bullshit. It's literally like a open space where people just talk about all the shit that they're super nerdy about. And I feel like that's missing because on Twitter, it's just toxic, or on Facebook forums, it's just toxic. Whereas there's no actual like website that just houses this happily. And I miss
comments. I'll say the comments are toxic. And I think that's where websites have fell by the wayside. Is people didn't want that walled garden anymore. They didn't want that moderator when people in or out. Pick the comments that you read, man.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll just talk. So the topic, we don't have emails this week, but those of you that actually want to contribute emails, and we will approach them, email cultpopgo@gmail.com. Questions, comments, concerns, things you want us to cover, review, talk about. We're not that difficult.
Christopher, good night. Stop leaving snarky comments on my Facebook page and write these guys an email.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Or if you could just forward us those snarky comments, and then we'll just go ahead and read them like they're an email.
He takes shots at my age all the time. That's our
We're all old.
Our little banter. I know.
I brought it up this past week in our group thread, our group chat, about how I am having trouble kind of keeping the thread or staying entertained by a lot of, in this instance, it was the DC animated shows and movies. I used to binge them, have the release dates memorized, loved every second of them, but now it seems that I can't keep the thread and wane interest. And it just kind of dawned on me, do I not like this anymore? Because even when I do sample these shows and see 2 or 3 episodes, they're great. They're really good. I like them. But there's no more that little, that fire in your belly that makes you really excited for the next episode or the next issue or to finish it. Doesn't seem to exist anymore. And I was wondering if you guys or anybody in the chat or watching or listening ever experienced that with something, a medium. Just like we go through peaks and valleys when it comes to, like, as you get older, the things that you love and you enjoy, whether it's video games or comic books or TV shows or movies. Have this happened to you? I know, Rob, you have a very good example.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Like, what how was your experience and how did you get through it, if you even have?
Brian, why don't you go first, man?
That has happened to me, surprisingly enough, with comics, that even comics that I really like The Flash, this most recent Wonder Woman run has been great, and I just will not get to them, and I am not driven to get to them. You know what I mean? And then every so often, like the Wonder Woman run that I'm not caught up on, but I'll be like, oh, let me read that. And I'll read 3 or 4 issues or whatever. And I'm like, that was good. But I'm not as much like, what's happening with Wally West now? You know what I mean? As once I was. So, yeah.
Yeah. Is there a sense of, like, it's satisfying, but maybe it's just empty calories now? And if so, that's fine. Sometimes you just want a Twinkie. But how do you either recapture it or let it go? Because you can't sustain yourself on Twinkies.
No,
right?
I can't. I don't even really like Twinkies.
No,
you're all right.
Insert poor metaphor here. To sustain you.
No, I just wanted to talk about actual Twinkies for a second. I want to get that out there. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see. What was the essence of that question again?
Oh,
how do you recapture the magic?
Right.
Essentially,
yeah. I guess for me, it more used to seem like this ongoing world. And I guess, at some point that stopped being as interesting, or I lost kind of a connection to some of the characters. Whereas before it was always like, what's going on? The interplay between them, what will happen to them, that kind of thing.
So are you suggesting that it's no longer a place you live so much as a place you visit from time to time?
Intriguing. Yes.
I'm all about shitty metaphors, guys.
That was really that was poetic. That was beyond just shitty. That was.
Have a good night, everybody.
I'd say it came back a little bit from for me through like a plot reason when DC did its recent let's get back to all of the past.
Everything matters of it all.
Yeah. Which
really?
has not shaken out to be as it never was going to.
Yeah.
That literally everything happened.
Are you suggesting that when everything matters, nothing matters?
I never really got that phrase, though.
When God damn it, I'm nothing but metaphors tonight. Fuck Monday. When you have birthday cake for every single meal, what makes a birthday cake special on your birthday? Like, if it's all the time, it's normal.
I don't know if that applies directly to continuity. To continuity, though, that might be a little different.
I'll make the case. It's more along the lines of when I don't know what the baseline is, when everything matters. How do I have any kind of a emotional connection to the base? Like, why do I care about the narrative if the narrative is constantly in real time in flux? Right?
Yeah, but I don't think that's what they meant by everything matters. I think they meant like all of the past events described happened.
Yes.
Like the various, so it gives you a shaky understanding of what version of Superman this is, or if there even is one version. But I think ultimately it really hasn't and was never going to turn out that way. it's just like, oh, everything happened, but none of the characters are like, Superman, remember that time that you cut off Lois Lane's oxygen in space? Yeah, so, yeah.
but they also like I'm cool with that, but they also made it seem as though the fact that all of these things happened, like you're saying, was going to take part in the ongoing story. And aside from 2 miniseries that I don't know anyone's talking about, it hasn't.
Yeah, I'm even struggling to get through the second one. And I want to read it. I want to know what's what with this universe spanning multiversal thing. But the first one I liked. The second one has been rough.
We're referring to Infinite Frontier and Justice League Incarnate.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, I have not gotten more than halfway through the first issue, so it could pick up. But I have not gotten more than halfway through the first issue.
Is that review enough?
Maybe? Yeah. But like I'm saying, like that kind of story, I'm still drawn to. I still want to know what happens in this. Like, what's the state of DC? You know,
what book was it? Justice League. Scott Snyder's Justice League. I was the only one reading it. All the large, weird, barely makes sense pomposity of it all, and you guys weren't reading it at all. But you would ask me to what's happening in it.
Yeah.
And even as I was talking through the broad strokes, it sounded 10 times cooler than experiencing it and reading it.
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe with this Infinite Frontier and Justice Incarnate, like reading the outline and what comes next is probably going to be more enjoyable than just like going through the process month to month.
So I did like Infinite Frontier, and that's why I do want to pick up with it, because it's the same writer continuing this story. So I do want to see if it gets better. But yeah, I think the way that Everything Matters has gone forward in the story is we are free to tell what seems like the classic version of these stories, and it's mostly the post-crisis with a little Silver Age thrown in, is what it's like shaken out to be. Like Dick Grayson is Nightwing and like that kind of stuff.
The only DC that I seem to be enjoying right now is just the Black Label stuff. Yeah.
It's unto itself. It doesn't. You're not bogged down by this clusterfuck of business decisions that they've made over the past decade, trying to find relevance.
DC especially, right? They just I feel editorial has gone through so many shakeups in the last 5 years. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but right now, like I was saying, like it got me a little more into it. This most recent thing that DC did. And I really feel like they have gotten back to, like, these are the types of DC comics that I want to read. And all of them have been good. Like, even if I'm 7 issues behind on The Flash, it's still, like, it was really good. And, I think they're like, nailing it right now, superhero universe-wise, too.
I've been enjoying the miniseries a lot. I feel
Human Target is DC.
I was going to say back to the topic at hand. I have, especially with DC, I still read a good handful of ongoing Marvel titles, but in regards to DC, I was not feeling fulfilled or entertained on a just like visceral level in regards to almost all of the ongoings. However, a lot of the miniseries, a lot of the Black Label stuff was scratching that itch. So you just kind of shifted as a consumer as opposed to just let it all go. Rob, though, you did make comics a job and you did experience something like this. How did you get through it? If you're even through
No, I'm not through it because I've stayed on the text chain, even though I haven't been on the podcast on the reg for 2 years now. And I come mewing now and then. I'm like Mars Comics mentions in the comics. Been reading comics since I was 8, so yeah, sometimes you just need a break. And it's the same thing. I've been reading them since I was 5. I did it for Ain't It Cool for 10 years, and you get a lot of comics thrown at you from the big 2 and especially from the indies. And I was probably like an 8 to 2 each week as far as just reading crap and drudgery and just trying to give people a break in some instances, especially with the indie comics. And then there were 2 that I actually enjoyed. And, our times have completely changed. We now just have this mega glut of entertainment in front of us. If we think back to our youths, we were all we had back then for this level of fantastical brain teasery was comic books, right? I mean, video games certainly weren't there. Movies were nil until like Batman 1989. I mean,
well, we also got to a
we had some
point.
Superman thrown in there, but
we got to a point where shows and movies looked like the comics would if they were in real life. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
CGI. I mean, CGI changed the game, and the deluge of it all. If we think about it now, there is not a bit of Star Wars, Marvel, DC geekery that doesn't hit almost weekly. Right. So, I mean, between that and I'm a huge video game nerd, right? So, I mean, I'll tell you, it was when I was so deep into comics and I was like almost going through it like a drudgery. And I'm like, I haven't played this glorious Spider-Man game yet because between my day job and life and everything and comics, I don't have any more hours in the day to actually imbibe this stuff. The other thing of it for me was, and I think, Brian, this might relate a little bit to what you were going through, is that tooth of continuity was gone. And I'm not saying go back to the old times. I'm not going to stand on the lawn and shake my fist. I don't give a shit. You kids like what you like. But I'll say that back in the day, the continuity mattered. And for both companies, they both let that go around 2011, right? I'll say New 52 is definitely the line in the sand for that. And then Marvel followed suit very shortly with Marvel Now. And nothing mattered anymore, right? There's always going to be a reboot. There's always going to be a reset. Well, we didn't always live in that world. You know, we did not always have the constant reset. There was a timeline, and man, even 5 years later, there was still a level of permanence to the stories that had been established. And that's just not the case anymore. Now, where I've come back, and it was basically JD mocking me, saying, I'm red, I hate comics. He was right. My grievance is with the big two right now, and how they've managed editorial. Image, Dark Horse, all of your, Oni, all of your others. That's where I find myself being drawn back into.
I will I'm gonna be a neckbeard nerd and just say actually Marvel has never rebooted ever.
Marvel Now was not a reboot.
No, they changed a lot of what characters were.
It was
who was in the Iron Man role or whatever.
It was Secret Wars. So Secret Wars happened, and they just like all the worlds and blah blah blah, and the whole multiverse was destroyed, and now it's just one Prime Earth. That was the beginning of Marvel Now. So some of the things were different, but then they just ended up adding them all back. So it was like everything has happened. DC is the only one that has like actively tried to pull off a hard reboot multiple times.
And then I saw this week we're reading Detective Number 1048. Fuck you guys. I mean, it's yeah. You did not. You tried it. It imploded in your face. Nobody liked your little waifish emo Superman, and you motherfuckers have just backpedaled since.
So,
which I think is good, right? Like if it's not working, it would be worse to stick with it.
That's true.
I have in the last year I have gone back because I'm same way. Like I was very hopeful about the idea of New 52. It felt because I was still high on the drug of Ultimate Marvel, which was a really, really fun way of reintroducing characters to new audiences. Because
I loved the Ultimate.
You want to refresh your audiences. If they're still catering to 40-year-old me, you're gonna die. That's fine. Like bring in new people. That's totally cool. So the idea of like the entire universe becoming maybe an Ultimate version, cool. But there was very little at the time. It felt like there was very little that was actually fresh or new about New 52 because it was all the same art style. It was all the same writers. They were just kind of picking and choosing what they wanted to redo. It was edgy. However,
they wanted to have their cake and eat it too. They wanted to have their cake and eat it too in New 52. I mean, that's how we had 3 Robins. I mean,
Batman and Green Lantern didn't.
Batman's getting a new ward every 2 years by this new continuity. He's collecting them like Beanie Babies.
They tried to literally truncate the good and the bad together instead of just recreating like they promised. So at the time, I did also drop off. But in the last year, recollections and 10th year anniversary and omnibuses and stuff, I've actually gone back without bias and read some of that stuff that I skipped out on. Some of it's actually pretty fun.
Yeah, some of the New 52 was good.
Really solid comics.
Yeah.
Like the
Demon Knights was good.
I read the Justice League New 52 omnibus, and it's as soon as you get past the first arc with all that really rushed Jim Lee art, it's delightful. The Batman run is fucking delightful. The Swamp Thing run is so fucking good. The Animal Man run is so fucking good.
Oh, that art is amazing.
There was a lot of even the Flash was really good. Like when Francis Manapul completely took over art and writing with Buccelletto.
Yeah,
there was a lot good. It just sucks that it all got lost underneath the umbrella of this, shiny new Tinker Toy bullshit. And I don't have a point. I just
no, it's all right.
It's always nice to go back sometimes and be proven wrong. It's nice to try and wipe off your rose-colored glasses sometimes, especially when it comes to stuff like this that's available still.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think I ever had. I mean, I gave a lot of favorable reviews for individual books in New 52. I think as a construct, it failed, and I don't know how to get the kiddies to give a shit, right? I mean, I don't know what the answer is for them. So you got to applaud, I guess, any effort they make.
Back to DC, they're probably doing it right when it comes to they've segmented their lines, right? Yeah. So not only have they made the main line digestible, like there's still a couple of ongoings, but almost all of their big characters are now either in miniseries or in black labels or have been renumbered or titled something different. So it's easily chunkable. But then also they're cranking out YA books like nobody's business.
Yeah.
Like just YA graphic novels constantly to try and grab younger readers, which sell just as good in the shop as Detective Comics 1048.
They probably see that. Yeah. They probably see that the issue model, like people are transitioning, like older readers are transitioning to trades, maybe not as in great a number, but they're probably seeing that as being like, why go after them for issues? The younger kids just try to get them interested in trades, and eventually maybe the issues will go away completely, in decades.
That's what this has been evolving to for the better part of 20 years. When you started to see 5-part series, they were clearly being built for the trade pacing, right? I mean, that's as soon as your Amazon and your online distributors came into effect, they realized it was an easier way to push the books. So, I mean, you started to see the writers writing the individual issues for the trade distribution. And I've got to say, from a dollar's perspective, I looked at what I was spending every month on comic books, and I'm going for $4. I'm getting about 10 minutes of entertainment, right? So for me, I go through them too quickly, and not all people read like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are your people that are far more pensive than I am, and absorb the page a lot more, and that's perfect for the individual issues. But for me, for what I was spending, I was like, trades. You just get a more complete diet. You're paying the same amount of money ultimately, but you're just getting a more complete diet from that sit down of that read.
Also, it's unfortunately, for a decade, you conditioned yourself to plow through as many as possible in a given week.
That's true.
That does fuck with your readership. Like,
it does,
I have had to consciously read things differently that we're not doing for the show. So I have, larger collections. I used to sit through and try and push through like 15, 20 issues at a time. And now I explicitly only read like a chapter and then grab another book if I want to keep reading, because there's the binging mentality when it comes to reading comics. I mean, if you're in love with a story and you just kind of keep falling forward into it, that's great. But I'm on Facebook groups and stuff with all these guys and gals who will buy an omnibus and I read it in 3 days. I'm like, did you eat? I mean, you spent $125 on a fucking book. Sit with it.
There's no reward for doing it.
You don't get a no prize for reading it first. Relax.
Yeah, well, and you're right. You're also reading it with the worst way to do a conversation is to be listening to someone with your response in mind. And I'm pretty bad at that. I'm guilty of it. So I'm always trying to be conscious of it. And you're doing the same thing with the comic books is you're reading the book with what your 1,000 to 1,100 to 1,200 word response is going to be in mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're almost, you're calculating the article while you're reading. That's another muscle memory I got to kind of turn off when I'm because I do it for work all day too, right? I mean, I've got to sit through 100, 50 white papers for technology stuff and think about how I'm going to craft them and make them better. So like you're not really enjoying the read. You're thinking about what the next step is going to be while you're absorbing the material.
That's funny. What I find when I read something out loud, like if I'm, reading like public speaking or whatever, I don't process what it actually says nearly as well as if I am, as if I was reading it. Like
that makes
if
sense.
Like I'm much more focused on putting it out, speaking into the world and crafting that, and I'm not absorbing the information as much.
Yeah, and I always have to put my finger under each word as I go along and mouth it. That's normal, right? I'm smart, right?
It's normal for
For simple, Rob, it's normal.
I like professionally. It's funny you say that because like professionally, I have to read. You write it all out, but then before handing it over whatsoever, literally out loud alone, reading it out loud. Because
I do it.
We write not how we sound and or think. So like it looks great on the page, but if I read it out loud, it sounds like a fucking robot. That's what I
do with that's what I do with half of my edits. And what I'm always telling my people is, do you say the word provides when you're speaking to somebody, or do you say offers or gives or something like that? Right?
Exactly.
We got to make everything natural language these days.
I often find if I'm writing something and editing, you read it to yourself. Sometimes I'll get to a sentence and I will put, when I'm reading it back, I'll put a word in, right, or take it out that. I can't think of any examples, but if you put like with which or whatever, that's a bit of a big word for it to be. And then if I do that a couple of times, I'm like, that word should probably be in there. I should write that word in there because I keep trying to say it as as I'm editing it.
I mean, like let's have a writing podcast. I'm such an asshole about ending with prepositions. To the point where I as a writer, I despise it. So not only do I try and speak as though I'm not ending words or sentences with prepositions, but I will restructure entire sentences and paragraphs to avoid it, including using active voice versus passive voice. I want to rip when people start every paragraph with passive voice. I want to rip their throats out, show them their throats, put it back, and then have them rewrite it in active voice because you're an asshole. Anyway,
that's the biggest sin, and especially in business to business, it happens all the time.
Oh, it's so awful. It's like
it's awful.
Like for 12 years now, blah 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 has done this. Like no, blah 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 has done this for 12 years. Relax,
12 years.
Active voice, you asshole. Anyway, speaking of active, would you guys like to review some comic books?
Let's do it.
Only if it's active. Only if we're speaking of active assholes.
I didn't read that one.
We must be on different Dropbox.
Active asshole.
The first book we're going to talk about tonight is Justice League versus Legion of Superheroes, #1 by DC Comics, written by Brian Michael Bendis with art by Scott Godlewski. Solicitations are as follows. 1,000 years in the future, a legion of superheroes comes together to dedicate their lives to recapturing the great age of heroes of the 21st century. When the heroes discover that reality is falling to a great darkness. This is where I didn't read it out loud, guys. Falling to a great darkness in both times simultaneously, the Justice League and the Legion of Superheroes must team up to stop it. But what is the connection between the secrets of the new gold lanterns and the coming of the great darkness? a monumental DC epic event miniseries starts now. So I am not a storied Legion reader. I have started and read 5 years later. I'm about 15 issues into it. It's very intricate, very dry, all 9 panels. It's a chore, but it's still enjoyable. I did read Bendis's reboot of the Legion that happened in 2020, 2019, 2020, somewhere in there. Yeah. Beautiful art by Ryan Sook, lasted 14 or 15 issues, capped up pretty well. I found it enjoyable. It was interesting. It was cute. It was slight, but also had a little bit of grit. This is just a continuation of that run for the most part. And I dug it. But I think I was predisposed to digging it because I had read the 15 issues before and really enjoyed it. I very much enjoyed this version of Superman / Jonathan Kent. I really, really like... I just like his Legion. I know that they're all rehashes of previous characters with slight tweaks on continuity, but I dig them. I also dig the frenetic nature of this book. This is how he wrote the Legion before. It's just a shit ton of 30 people in a room talking over each other, which is very... If anyone's going to complain about it, I don't disagree with you, but yeah. I kind of enjoyed it. I enjoy I think in this book, especially, there's a double page splash with literally all the Legion that chose to travel and then the Justice League all talking over a table, and you could go left to right across, you could actually go up and down, and it didn't necessarily it didn't it didn't actually matter because there was no real correct order to read it in. But I know that a lot of people may find that frustrating, but to me, I found that slightly charming. The art's not that great. I am not a giant fan of Scott Godlewski, and I think only so much as I'm comparing him in my head to Ryan Sook, because that's who covered these characters last, and they are not comparable. They are very different.
They're not dissimilar styles, though. Like, I could see how you would look at this and you're like, it's like Ryan Sook, but not as well
it's
done.
Like,
you know what
it's
I mean?
It's like a cartoon adaptation of Ryan Sook.
Yeah.
There's Ryan Sook really does give more humanistic facial features and acting, almost closer to Kevin Maguire than Godlewski ever would. Like, it's almost like if they infused Ryan Sook with some Oming. And that's what Godlewski
I
does.
could see that. Yeah.
But overall, I think I would give this a B+, but I would be hard pressed to recommend it to literally anyone to jump in, because it is seeped in like 3 different recognizable continuities. And if you're not into any of them, then why would you bother? What did you guys think? Brian?
I liked this book. I don't like this Legion as much as I want to. You know, like, I was excited that they were back. I'm like, this is cool. I just, they don't ring as the Legion that I want to be reading as much, you know, like a lot of the costume designs I'm not too into. And yeah.
I love the costume designs. I thought you were going to talk about like versions of characters, but
there's
the costumes
that,
I actually
but not
like.
too much.
All right.
Some of the costumes I like a lot, like Saturn Girl's costume is pretty cool. There's some of them I like. I think it's just Triplicate Girl and Cosmic Boy maybe that I'm not as into. But just in general, I don't think Brian Michael Bendis writes what feels like DC to me. Yeah. You know? It just, I don't know exactly why. It's like the things that he brings to it don't seem like core DC. They seem like... I don't know.
He seems almost bored.
Well, I was going to say, can I challenge that? Is that...
Yeah.
And this is for all 3 of us. Is that our baggage with him and his style, or is that house styles? And can we articulate it? So, like, what would you say is indicative of DC/Legion prior that isn't captured by him exclusively? Like, let's put words to it.
So I would say that for me, those are two different things. I am growing weary of his style in general, right? Like,
that's fair.
Yeah, just like the way that he has, like, he was great for Amazing Spider-Man or Ultimate Spider-Man, and these people talk kind of like Batman saying, "I'm sorry, I have to move this along, but I have a million things to attend to this month." That doesn't sound like Batman, you know?
Yeah.
Batman has a million things to attend to this month. It just doesn't ring Bruce Wayne to me. And just the way that he has people kind of talk to each other don't feel like the individual kind of characterizations that have sprung up over the years, specifically with the Legion. I don't know. Some of the things, a little thing, he refers to the area that they're in as the Galactic, right? Which is like a play on galaxy, and it's supposed to be future-y. I don't like it that much. Just
I don't remember.
What's weird? What's very weird though is you led off this review with, "I kind of like this book."
I did. All that being said, I did.
Absolute trash, shit, garbage, stupid. Everyone sucks. B+.
Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
Yeah.
But no. How was your time though? Did you enjoy it though? Like, how was it?
Yeah, I did enjoy it. I thought overall, I was like, man, this isn't really the Legion that I want to see, but this story is all right. We'll see where it goes. Legion meeting the Justice League. I'm into that. Maybe at some point people will reboot the Legion again, or just.
I mean,
yeah, they will.
They will, like, because the curve of the universe bends towards reboot, but not for a while, especially if like rumors are true that they're developing a animated show based off of this version of the Legion. This version of the Legion.
Yeah.
I
mean, it doesn't even have to be a reboot. A few years go by, there's a different writer, different looks for everybody, and these storylines are all in the past. You know what I mean? Or like the Daxamites not being Daxamites anymore. Mon-El is Superboy's descendant.
Yeah, he's a Kryptonian.
Yeah. I thought the Daxamites were cool.
They haven't gotten rid of Daxamites. They've just changed Mon-El's origin.
Specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Daxamites aren't gone. It's just...
Oh, that's good.
He is a descendant of the House of El now. Yeah. Maybe he's... You know what? We don't know enough at this point. He might be half Daxamite for all we know.
But he's also just from the 31st century, right? He's not like from now and trapped in the Phantom Zone for 1,000 years.
The entire like, spoilers, the entire 15-issue Bendis run, he is acting like a little bit of a twerp and very standoffish when Jonathan Kent comes around, because you find out towards the end his entire life hanging over his head has been the greatness of the House of El, and he's a part of it. And now he's face to face with it, and he's just like, why can't I just be my fucking self?
Yeah, that's not Mon-El. But, that's Bendis's Mon-El, I guess, his version. But it's an interesting idea for sure. All right.
I mean, I've read Mon-El, and I don't know. That's not Mon-El. I don't, not like you saying it doesn't bother me, but if I was having a conversation with somebody else that I don't know where they're coming from and just says, "That's not them," like, that's not good enough.
It is a completely different character who is also named Mon-El and has similar superpowers. But I also see where you're coming from, that when people are like, this isn't this hero.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe we'll talk about it a little later. Like, I had a conversation with somebody in the shop when we were talking about Peacemaker. They were like, well, I didn't like it. It's not Peacemaker. Like,
who cares?
Like, you eliminate yourself from ever enjoying it because it's just only your myopic version of how it could be. And I know that's not what you're saying in regards to Mon-El. Yes, they completely changed the makeup of the character. but I think I was just triggered by the
that's
phrasing.
Fine.
Yeah.
No, and it's not a phrase that I would normally say,
Mhm.
because whatever version of the character you say, like you write a story about, is a version of that character. Like this character is Monel
Hashtag
in this version.
Not my Monel. Rob, what did you think of this glorious A+ of a book? I think both Brian and I are in agreement. This was the best thing that we've ever read.
Even though you guys couldn't find one complimentary thing to say about it.
I said so many complimentary things.
You had some compliments, yes. Okay, so let's start off with verse. Justice League verse Legion of Superheroes. I saw no versing.
Yeah, they haven't gotten to that, I guess.
It was a lot of just, hey, who are you? And hey, you're you. And I read about you once. And what are you?
What is it? And maybe in issue 3, they're going to like, no, I don't want to do it that way. And then Batman's going to be like, no, we're doing it this way. And then
except he'll say it really awkwardly.
Yeah. He'll say it like the
oh no, this shall be the way we do it in this time.
Batman, you know what?
This is the way we're going to do it. We're going to do it this way.
Yeah, Bendis has not written Batman like he wrote Batman Universe, which is
that's great,
a fucking masterpiece.
Really, really good. Yeah.
But he has not written Batman like any other version, except that like he's only written it like that version this whole time. Like that was a daylight Batman, and he's never changed as he goes. But anyway, Rob, I cut you off. What did you think of this glorious book?
I'll be the one who actually admits I don't like this. I haven't read a Justice League book in 2 years. The last Legion I was really into was the Legion that was an acronym back in '89.
Oh, it was so good by Tony Bedard.
Wait, no. Best. Yeah.
That was so good.
Yeah, Legion '89. I did read a little bit of the one that Christopher Goodnight mentioned, that there was one that came out around the Green Lantern Rebirth time, and that was
the Mark Waid, Barry Kitson.
I think so. Yeah,
those costume design. Oh, they were. But not that was. I think maybe I don't know. It's up there in my Legion runs. That was a really good run.
Yeah.
I never read that one. I read Legion acronym. Early 2000s by Tony Bedard, and it was Brainiac 19, and he was an asshole. And I read some of the Paul Levitt stuff from New 52. I actually have it on the shelf.
Yeah, and I mean, all that stuff was great. I having walked into this cold, I was left with a malaise. I couldn't believe it was a Bendis book because I didn't really chuckle once. There's always a moment in a Bendis book where I will chuckle, I will smirk. He does some nice, fun wordplay or something. I got none of that. And let me make sure the antagonist in all of this is darkness.
Well, there's that Legion, the Great Darkness saga, which he is definitively referencing. But
absolutely. But I never read the Great Darkness.
Neither did I. I don't remember.
I don't think it involves actual darkness coming out. A little more metaphorical.
I was going to say, what is it in reference to? The only Legion that I've read is what we had already discussed. I started 5 years later. But then I also the Jeff Johns, George Perez Final Crisis mini, Legion of Three Worlds.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, they only have one bad guy, and it's the time guy, the
time trapper, who is actually turns out to be various people, and it's like something with manipulating time. Like Superboy Prime was the time trapper, Cosmic Boy was the time trapper.
When they, but like to my point, when they drop these like deep in the weeds Legion nuggets of like, it's like when you have a villain reveal at the end of an issue, and you're like, I don't know who the fuck that is.
Yeah.
It's exactly like I know that this is the part of the book that's supposed to surprise me, but I don't know who that is.
Yeah,
so when they make reference,
everything we've talked about has come with a pre-context of knowledge. Again, coming back into all of this cold is very interesting for me because it's, I've forgotten a lot of this stuff and I haven't been following the recent events. So I could consider myself like a newbie walking into the store for the first time going, ooh, what's this book? Legion, Justice League versus Legion #1. I wouldn't come back for #2.
This is, had I known you were going to be on the show, earlier than this afternoon, I probably would have picked the books we're going to talk about differently.
It's all right. No, this is a
Because
number one issue. This is not on
it
you,
is.
Noel. This is DC. This is on DC. It's a number one.
But I think later on I'd be like, I really should have dropped something else in the Dropbox too, or the number one also.
I mean, I think it's a marquee book. It just, you know, in scope and characters and that kind of thing, and it's reasonable to talk about. The Great Darkness Saga, I believe, was when Darkseid reappears, and science had gotten so advanced that it was well beyond people's understanding, and that lack of knowing allowed magic to come back into the universe. Which I always thought was a really cool idea.
That was cool.
I did appreciate the aggressive use of Kirby Crackle in this issue.
In the back, especially the last page. Yeah.
It's literally everywhere. It was a very kind of elegant way of showing distortion on a static page. I liked it. But overall, yeah, this is it's hard to drop somebody in on this cold. It does read like, you know, to Bendis's weak points, it does read like a lot of his first issues of events. It's a shit ton of setup and not a very climactic last page. Like the first issue of Secret Invasion really wasn't that great. The first issue of House of M just ended with like a blank page. You're like, what the fuck is happening? Like his first issues of events really aren't that great in hindsight.
I felt something with House of M. I don't know.
I felt with the blank. Yeah.
I felt confusion because it was just blank. If I was to get and the context of it was, if you just read House of M #1 without having read Disassembled or the first arc of New Avengers, would you have felt the same way as you did reading this? Because the context of that entire setup was based off of 20 issues of something else.
Was the blank page
hard to say?
Was at the end of the first issue where the new reality came into existence?
Yeah, like it like, you know, they go and confront her and all shit goes awry and it's just white and Wolverine wakes up.
Yeah, I remember being grabbed by that. I don't think I read Disassembled actually. But I was aware of what was happening, you know, so that's a little different. Now, I'm interested in the Gold Lantern, and I have been for the last 2 years.
What is the difference between a Gold Lantern and a Yellow Lantern? Like
we don't know yet.
Presumably there is some difference. Well, because the Gold Lantern showed up a little bit like 2 years ago, and he never got to him. I think
it was only in Legion.
Yeah,
it's the future version of the Lanterns. It was a mystery seeded that we don't know what happened to the Green Lanterns,
which has always been.
Neither does this Gold Lantern. He does not know anything about Oa or the Green. So apparently, the underlining. I mean, it's apparent in this book, but the whole underlying arc or
here's what I found.
Theme of this whole thing is that we're going to find out what the fuck a Gold Lantern is.
Yeah, they've been. I thought we were going to find it out like a while ago, and I'm happy to find this out. Like, I want to know what the deal is. That has always been the case with the Legion because they started telling these stories. They were set 1,000 years in the future. They didn't think about representing Green Lantern at that time, and then over the decades, the mythos grew, and the Lantern Corps had been around for billions of years, but never showed up in the future. So every now and then something, you know, I think in the Levitz given like time, there was one or two, maybe like the last of the Green Lanterns, like they found a ring or something like that. Like, so there's little hints of it now and then. Sodom Yat became the Green Lantern of 1,000 years from now in the last kind of, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm curious to see what happened this time to the Green Lantern Corps. And what's the deal with the Gold Lanterns?
Well, it sounds like 2 or 3 of us might try issue 2.
No, I won't. I absolutely won't read this.
So the next book we're going to talk about is As 180 of a Twist as We Can Get. It is Reign #1 by Image Comics. It's based on a story written by Joe Hill, but the actual comic was adapted by David Booher, with art by Zoe Thorogood. Solicitations are as follows. On a seemingly normal August day in Boulder, Colorado, the skies are clear and honeysuckle speck couldn't be happier. That's her name, Honeysuckle Speck. She's finally moving in with her girlfriend Yolanda, but their world is literally torn apart when dark clouds roll in and release a downpour of nails, splinters of bright crystal that shred the skin of anyone not safely undercover. Rain makes vivid this escalating apocalyptic event as the deluge of nails spreads across the country and around the world, threatening everything young lovers Honeysuckle and Yolanda hold dear. I had not read the original short story this is based on by Joe Hill. So I was going, all I knew is that it was about shards of glass coming from the sky. This issue was brutal. I thought it was effective. I thought it was tragic. I thought it was disturbing. And I liked it. This was hard to read, but also very engrossing, which I think is a trait of Joe Hill's work often. Like, can't turn away. It's really disturbing, but still engaging. And I think the adaptation kind of nailed that. The art sometimes is a little rough, but it's still tonally consistent. So I forgive facial expressions here and there, or body proportions here and there. I dug it. I don't know if I'm going to read this in issues, but it might be something that I pick up and trade down the road, because I think it was pretty impressive. What did you guys think, Rob?
Yeah, Joe Hill can do no wrong for me. I mean, there's just there hasn't been anything this guy's written that I just haven't loved. My favorite probably being The Cape. That's still probably the one that just always sticks with me. It makes me kind of shudder a little bit. This was great, and I think I don't think I have anything really much to add beyond what you hit, Noel. It was great story, great characters, the setup of them and their love, and then the ultimate loss that comes from this storm of needles, whatever the hell it is. I was so into it. I wanted more, though, right? So if I'm talking about the price of entry, if I'm talking about it was over far too quickly. So absolutely what I will look for when it gets to be the trade realm. But it was fantastic.
What about you?
I think, Rob, possibly one of the reasons for you saying that you wanted more of it is how long it took in the beginning to get to the thing that happens, right?
Sure.
And I felt that too. So I'll say this was a really well done book, and the art is great, and I did not enjoy reading it. I was like, man, this is about to be terrible. I'm not 100% sure Yolanda's gonna die. It's a lot of bad stuff's about to happen, and it keeps not happening. And I'm like, come on, Yolanda, get inside. This thing's about to happen. You can see it's going to rain.
But most people, when it's going to rain, you don't immediately run for the house. I mean, depends
you got
on
a couple
rain,
minutes. If I get a couple jobs, but if I get a couple jobs,
usually it's fine. Yeah. It's not a big deal. But and she seems great, right? Their love is great, and it seems so halcyon in art in the beginning. And I didn't know that this was what was going to happen. I didn't figure out till a few pages in that this was not like a metaphor on the cover. Well, half of it is, but I thought, I was like, what's the deal with this? It looks kind of like something abstract, supernatural, perhaps, or whatever. So as I was reading it, I was like, oh man, I felt what he wanted me to feel, I suppose. I just wasn't into it. I don't want to read it. I'm like, I don't want to see other people get pierced by these things. Also, what is the second issue, right? Like, is this the world after this has happened? Because that I'm not interested in at all. Is it other stories of people when this happened?
I don't know.
Depending on the story, who knows?
I don't know.
But yeah, like I feel sad about this woman's, this relationship, this end of this relationship. But
there were some choices in the art that I found effective, not enjoyable, but incredibly effective. Like, and not even talking about Yolanda so much as, like the last scene with her, but some of the side characters, how like you would get a random panel of Yolanda's mother doing this as you normally would, but then
Right.
shunk, 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 shunk. Like,
Yeah.
I heard those noises when I
Mm.
was reading it because it was so, like, the art and the pacing were just so effective.
Yeah.
You're right. This was not enjoyable to read, but it was a really strong read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The art also is the kind of art that is often found in these sort of magical realism kind of stories, or it reminds me a little bit of The Many Deaths of Layla Starr, or
Yeah.
Karma, I think it was called. Do you remember that
Carmen.
one?
It was Carmen.
That's
Yeah.
right. That kind of thing where it's this, it has this kind of like otherworldly, real but realistic quality to it.
I like to call it, or I like to think of it as like a rubbery version of Frank Quietly.
Yeah, I can see that.
Oh,
Yeah.
It gives me very much
Riley
like
stretched out.
it's like a Paper Girls vibe was what
Little
I
bit.
was getting from it. Yeah.
And a lot of times that art is used to tell, stories that are not unlike this, but aren't necessarily about like
Real.
anguish and horror. That are, either real, or have, these fantastic elements as well. So, like if we look at the cover, it's this kind of, I don't know, very, very supernatural kind of, especially. Anyway, yeah, I didn't know what I was getting into when I read it. It could have gone a variety of ways, but well done. The way that they do the what's her name? I forget. The woman who dies.
Yolanda.
Yolanda. The way that they do her dress on the front, this like Klimt-esque kind of thing. Yeah, I'd like to see this artist do something else in a similar vein.
There's absolutely no way Yolanda's mother's car could actually drive in the real world. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Like the tires on it are
I did not.
45-degree angle. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Magical realism, whatever. Like that's
I think
what
it's
took
an
you out of it?
experimental gadget car, and it's just
I think it's
in mid transformation.
I think it's the Pacer. Yeah, it's something from the 70s.
I don't know if there's much more to add to this one. It's a strong read. If you are familiar with the kind of stories that Joe Hill tells, the tragic nature of sometimes that they delve into, this is you'll enjoy this.
You'll dig it. Yeah.
Yeah. The next book we're going to talk about is King of Spies #2 by Image Comics, with written by Mark Miller, with art by the great Matteo Scalera. We covered the first issue, and I think Brian, remind me, but I think all of us were surprised how much we enjoyed it. Like,
I think you're right. Yeah,
it was super edgelordy, and then all of a sudden, it turned into like
up.
Really fun.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk about with Rob. Let me read the solicitation first, though. The world's greatest secret agent is murdering every crooked politician and spy master he blames for the world we're in right now. A killing spree that takes him to presidents and prime ministers in a race against the brain tumor that's killing him. He's literally the world's most wanted man, and only the person he loves can take him down. So the first issue, Mark Miller exists in this space between fucking stop and give me more of that. And at any given moment, he shifts from one to the other, because there's some things of his that I read that it's just like, fucking stop. Like, this balls to the wall, edgelordy bullshit just doesn't work anymore. It's no longer 1999. Tell a different story. But then sometimes he'll hit, and it's just nigh brilliant. So, like, it's the difference between Chrononauts, which is just like two broskies being Back to the Future-esque and just getting laid everywhere.
They're time douches. Yeah.
Yeah. To Starlight, which is a fucking masterpiece. And the same dude does both. So the first issue, the opening action scene, almost like, a cold open for a Bond movie, is so goddamn ridiculous. Like, jumping off of he cut the cord of a woman that just gave birth with his Walther PPK and jumped off the side of a building with a baby, and like, it's just and making sexist jokes left and right the whole time, and it's just like, oh, is this going to be the whole book? And then it fast forwards like 35 years, and he's just like a distinguished gentleman who hits a turning point and now is just taking out the entirety of his list of people he know are terrible. And it just was really, really effective at the end, even though it's an incredibly, I can't think of this plot point being used. I can't think of a good example, but it feels like a plot point that is used constantly. I've only got so much time left, and I'm going to clear the deck before I die.
Breaking Bad.
That's a good example of it, where he's on time, like, he's got a ticking clock, so we're going to do all this as quick and dirty as possible. This second issue was more of the good that I liked from the first. And when they introduced the son character very briefly in the first issue, you knew it was going to be a thing. And then bringing it in very quickly here was slick. I liked it. I love Matteo Scalera. I know that his art is an acquired taste, but I love it. I love the kinetic, wavy nature of it sometimes, like not unlike animated, where if figures are still, it's very detailed and it's exaggerated, but it's there. But as soon as motion happens, it gets messy, it gets loose. And to me, that helps with the progression in panels. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. This is so far for me in the Mark Miller buy it pile and not in the Mark Miller skip it pile. What did you guys think, Rob?
I was not lost coming into issue number 2, which I think is a real testament to what the way he sets a story, nor was I bored or felt like there was a deluge of exposition that was thrown at me to get me up to speed for what issue 2 was. I'm in the same place in Millar. Sometimes it's a home run. Sometimes it's a ground ball. I think I like a little bit more of this stuff because I can handle those douche characters as long as there's some kind of counterbalance within the book, which he always does a good job throwing in some ancillary character to be that voice of reason, right? So what I liked most about this, it wasn't his traditional gimmicky way of saying, I'm going to take a comic thing and I'm going to twist it, right? I mean, this feels like he's really kind of creating his own original story. What I found most interesting was it was Mark Millar for Netflix on the front cover. Isn't that?
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
It's been for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, but when is this shit going to come out on Netflix? Like, we've been waiting for.
I mean, yeah, we'll get to that. All right. Ryan, what did you think of the book? Because that's like a separate conversation about his output.
I liked it. Yeah, it was more of the same. He's got his list of people, and now he is taking them out. It's not I'm going to go take out those people. And yeah, it's interesting. He continues to be a compelling character. And it's fun seeing him enact these, these plans with it's a good, like, very skilled spy kind of story and beats, that kind of thing. And it's fun to see the extraordinary in comics like this, right? Like the guy who's like, I'm going to go take out 2 prime ministers because they did all these things, doing even in the context of the story, doing the kind of thing that never happens, he's like, I'm actually going to do it. I can, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah. I was also surprised how it escalates. So Mark, what he does well is he does think like he doesn't waste time. This is only a 4-issue miniseries. And in issue 2, we're talking about taking out 2 prime ministers, and he takes out the president of the United States and the rest of the cabinet. Like, for other stories, I feel like that's the culmination that's thwarted, not necessarily, it's the opening of issue 2. Yeah. Like, he's just going.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reckless speed that he never truly loses control of that I think is really impressive.
Well, because I think the character may win by the end of it. You know what I mean? Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to die a peaceful death. I think he's going to make it. He's going to take out all the bad people he wants to take out.
Yeah.
I love how Millar is also, he doesn't shy away from timeliness. I think there was like at one point in the book where he kills basically Prince Andrew.
Yes.
There was definitely. There was that. I feel like there was at least one other person who was not named, but they talked about Diana as well.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This guy was and I feel like the president was probably George W. Bush.
It's Bushy.
Yeah.
Like he wasn't. It was essentially Bush,
Yeah.
but
the puppet president,
who started a war. I don't know that he started it, but he certainly kept it running.
It in regards to the by Netflix thing, like Miller World is owned by Netflix. Everything that he creates is potential IP for Netflix.
Okay,
so he's making these comics. Some of them will become something. Some of them will just be IP owned and never turn into anything. Jupiter's Legacy was a decent TV show that was canceled after one season.
it was okay.
It was decent. Like it was
decent. It was all right. Yeah.
We watched it. It was one of those things that we watched during pandemic that was just like falling forward. The next episode kept starting and we were like, this doesn't suck.
Yeah.
But it was never, if I had to wait week to week, then it probably would have been like, oh, that's still on. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it actually says created by Mark Millar at Netflix.
Netflix,
yeah.
He's
an interesting distinction.
He is effectively owned, and that is like his home. So like at Netflix is the same thing as by DC Comics.
Yeah.
Their publisher is just the place that they get it printed, but it's all owned in perpetuity by Netflix.
Although it's also published by Image.
Yeah, that's just the place. The Image is not a
It's not the same.
Image is not a multimedia house.
Yeah, no.
Image is not ever going to make. They don't have a production studio.
It's a creator-owned house. That's it.
I mean, presumably Netflix was like, "Hey, the people that already own comics are kind of looking at those as test runs and storyboards.
Yeah.
What if we did some market research in the same way, rather, and come at it from the other direction?"
Sure.
Yeah, and I think the other things that he has, so he's not allowed to. Anything that's been developed already is not allowed to be owned by Netflix as part of the deal. So, Kingsman and Kick-Ass, not touchable. Nemesis, I think, went back to them because it was never produced by Universal because Universal bought that. I have to revisit that. I remember not really caring for it, but I would like to read it again.
I liked Huck. I would like to see them do something with Huck.
Huck is owned. Starlight is amazing, as I said before. Empress, I really loved. Reborn, I believe, with Capullo was in development at Netflix with Sandra Bullock. And Super Crooks and Superior are being developed into anime shows. I think Super Crooks is being advertised. And the last one was Magic Order. They're developing Magic Order now as a live action TV show. So like all of these, it behooved him to stop writing big two books and just constantly creating his own stuff, whether it was hit or miss, because now it's all owned by a production company that could immediately put it into production for him if he wanted to.
I wonder how much they discuss that with him in the creation side, right? If they're like, we would like this book to be this kind of thing, or we're looking for something that fills this niche, or even more, who knows? Or if he has free reign and they're like pick and choose what they think is cool,
I mean, the last interview he did like a word balloon interview with Suntress a couple years ago when it first started. Oh no, not that long ago. But from what I understand, they have no actual editorial control over him so much as it's an incentive for him to try and, if wherever his creativity overlaps with the incentive of what they want or what like the trends and what is happening. Right. So also too, American Jesus was being, it was in pre-production for potentially becoming a live action miniseries too. I like that. I like that book a lot, actually.
I think you're just looking at the masses. Chronauts would go over like gangbusters.
Right? Chrononauts would go over like gangbusters.
Yeah.
I can't talk about it enough. Starlight is so goddamn good. That would be so awesome.
What's that about?
It is the happy version of Strange Adventures when someone comes, like a Buck Rogers guy comes back to live his life with his wife.
Oh, yeah. I remember
and then
that.
like 30, 40 years later, she passes away of natural causes and then he's called back. So you have like an older hero going back to kind of free the land that he once freed in an intergalactic.
That sounds cool.
It's like such a feel good, beautiful space adventure. I loved it so much.
Nice.
And also, I read Magic Order for the first time on vacation, and I was like, "Why did this book skip me by? This was so freaking good." It actually had a twist that I did not see coming, which doesn't happen often because we read so much shit that nobody can fool us anymore.
That was there was a Twilight Zone reboot with Forrest Whitaker in the fairly early 2000s.
Yeah, it was on UPN, my dude. I remember.
Yeah. I own the DVD set. I got it when The Wall or FYE was closing.
You're the one.
Yeah. But I'll tell you what, that show was phenomenal. And one of the things I liked the most about it was that it took me like a half a season to be able to figure out what their twist was going to be, It was great. Like they were unexpected, and I liked that a lot.
We have 2 more books to talk about, but before we do, real quick, if you like what we're doing here, be sure to become a patron, patreon.com/JohnnyDestructo. There are tons of different ways that you could support the show. If monetarily is not your bag, you can very easily go on youtube.com/CultPopGo or facebook.com/CultPopPodcasts. Like, comment, subscribe, join us for the live shows. Just any way that we could socialize our conversation with you is a way that you could help the show without hurting your pocket. Dude, just patronize Johnny Destructo's Hero Complex. We do mail-outs. Get your comics from us. If you like anything that we're talking about, it's all readily available for the most part. And then we'll send it to you. Email. Anyway, how's that for a quick and dirty plug?
Perfect. It was perfect. Yeah.
Next book we're going to talk about is Daredevil, Woman Without Fear #1 by Marvel Comics, written by Chip Zdarsky with art by Rafael de la Torre. Elektra is the world's deadliest assassin, and she's taken a vow not to kill. Someone puts themselves directly in her path with deadly consequences. What else would you expect from Marvel's greatest hunter? That's the worst solicit I've ever read because it's just a bunch of incomplete sentences, but whatever.
Also, it kind of gives something away, which probably should not have been given away in this.
JD reminded me that it was actually given away in issue 2 of Devil's Reign, which I completely forgot because we read that like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, I forgot about that too.
So this is technically a tie-in book, but it doesn't read like a tie-in book, and I actually appreciate that.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So Devil's Reign is the current Marvel event that's happening right now. It's essentially a mini version of Civil War. Wilson Fisk is the mayor of New York, and he has passed legislation about anti-vigilantism in New York. And if you know anything about the Marvel universe, I don't know, maybe like roughly 98.9% of all superheroes reside in New York. So
why
that's a problem.
Why are they holding?
Because that's
your world.
Where all the it's where all the writers lived.
Yeah, it was the whole your world thing. Right?
Or are there just like all these superheroes everywhere that we just never see or hear about? I mean, they have never come up in a Marvel comic.
They all have Broadway dreams.
What are they going to protect in Montana? Sheep? I mean,
whatever.
I mean,
yeah.
But if something happens to the sheep.
So the first 2 issues of Devil's Reign has come out. It is very much a redux of Civil War. However, the story knows it's a redux of Civil War and constantly keeps kind of commenting on it in fun ways. So I'm really enjoying it. Mileage may vary. And also the art by Marco Cicchetto is just fucking 11 out of 10. But this doesn't read like a like a tie-in. This is just a side story. This is a side quest story with the current Daredevil, who is Elektra. I think it read really well. It's very tight. It's a really, really good time filler. And by that, I don't mean that as a pejorative. Sometimes in comics, you have to kind of shuffle the cups on the table for a little while something else is going on. What's interesting is that Chip Zdarsky is writing both the event and this book. So it's like, even he is like, I just want to kind of pause my character for a second, which I think is really funny, but it also kind of creates a cohesiveness. I think the art was fine. No, the art was good. It was strong, but it's just not my favorite. I mean, I feel like this book has had, the Daredevil book for the last 30 issues has had some top tier amazing art, as Daredevil often does. I feel like Daredevil is that premier book at Marvel that no one talks about, but everyone loves. Like, Daredevil, more than any other character, has some of the strongest runs in modern comics. From Bendis on, it's just been strong run after strong run, but nobody really talks about it until they're over.
Daredevil is more for comic book fans. Daredevil is where comic book fans circle with each other. If you ask your average person on the street, like I still have people asking me, Daredevil on Netflix, worth the time? All my non-comic or non-nerdy friends. So he's just not one that the masses gravitate to. But anybody who reads comics knows it and can name the seminal books.
Yeah, I feel like it's the most consistently excellent title at Marvel, right? Like, even when you're not reading it, you hear about like, oh, I mean, Zdarsky on Daredevil has been fantastic. Soul on Daredevil has been fantastic. It's I look at my shelf and I would never in a million years tell you my favorite character is Daredevil, but I have like 3 shelves of Daredevil. It's just, it silently always takes it, right? But yeah, this was strong. This was just a really good in between issue that was very, very solid, indicative of the rest of the run. How did you guys feel, Brian?
I like this book. I don't think it feels like a tie-in at all, and I didn't even really think of it as a tie-in until you mentioned it. It feels like something that is happening while the Devil's Reign is happening. Like, that's something that's going on in the universe, and so she mentions it, and is even intending to go there. But it doesn't feel like this story is a part of that or dependent upon it in any way. And also partially just because it doesn't say anything about it on the cover. Most of these would be like Devil's Reign, Daredevil, Woman Without Fear.
I feel like this is like on the in the pull box. This is like, there's no Daredevil being published right now. So this is like the replacement.
This is Daredevil. For Daredevil. That's how I thought. That's what I thought it was. I thought this was just Daredevil, but with a new subheading, I guess you would call it.
It's a 3-issue miniseries.
Oh, how about that? It's good. I really like the art. I think Elektra as Daredevil is very cool. And especially because Matt Murdock is now back as Daredevil, but she also is Daredevil. And I like the blend that they've done of her look and Daredevil. Like, it's very effective kind of comics mashup sort of thing. Now, did they always know each other in college? Like, ever since she was introduced, were she and Matt, like, people who knew each other and dated or at least knew each other in college?
I don't know if it's original continuity, but it is recent continuity. Okay, if that makes like, it's not something that was baked into the first appearance, but this is not the first time that they've mentioned,
like, it's been around,
had a life together.
But like in the 90s, is this like going way back, or?
I think this is 20 years worth of continuity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, all that being said, they do a thing in this comic that happens sometimes where a writer will write something that is phrased in a way that it sounds wise or smart and is not the case. You know what I mean? It sounds like this insight where she meets the second person that trains her and she says, the deadliest things in the world are silent. And it's like,
Farts.
die a hero or live long enough to see yourself as a villain.
You know
it's
what
like,
happens?
I think the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs was probably pretty loud.
You know what happens to a frog that gets struck by lightning?
Same thing as happens to everything else.
Yeah.
That's a good line. I like that line because I think it's cool. I think it's a cool line. And that is also true. It is. I mean, not everything else.
It's a true statement, but is it a zinger? No.
I never agreed with all of the dislike that line has gotten. When I saw it, I was like, oh, that's fun. That's clever. But
maybe
that is actually it. So I did actually recently read an article that said in the original earlier version of the script, there were like 2 other instances of Toad saying things like that. And so when she said it, she was like kind of parroting him back, and her delivery made more sense.
So it was supposed to be a callback? Now I'm more mad about it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they ever filmed it or anything. I don't know. It was
but why would it have
in an early draft?
It shouldn't have survived the draft if it that's like keeping the punchline and not having the joke.
See, I always thought it was a cool line on its own. Like, what happens is everything else. But that's me. But
this book,
the deadliest things in the world are silent, is not a true statement, I don't think. Or maybe it is, but it's when those things show up in pop culture writing, I'm like, it's debatable at best.
Todd jumped in with I'd say Daredevil began its goodness way back with Frank Miller, followed by Innocenti. Underrated run, but it hasn't grabbed me for a long time. I tried Electro Run based on you guys telling us, but the issue I read didn't work for me. You definitely shouldn't start with it. If you're referring to issue 25 where she becomes Daredevil, no, the seeds were 24 issues before where it became really effective.
Just read through those 24 and then.
Well, I mean, it was.
That's all.
On the nose, it's just a pitch in a room. Like, what if Elektra's Daredevil? Yeah, great. Yeah. Start it out. But Zdarsky really did go through the effort of setting it up in an organic way, and then putting even the mechanics of it all, where we put Matt in prison again. Yeah, we've seen him in prison. Who cares? But he always kind of twists it a little bit, where it's actually Daredevil that's in prison. And he's wearing his mask the whole time, and all of the legal somersaults about Matt being still existing in the real world with his twin and all kinds of weird shit. Like he set it up in such a way where it's, even though it sounded tropey, it felt fresh in context.
That storyline where he made his twin real was pretty cool. We read that for the show. Yeah.
That was weird as hell, but it was good.
It was cool. And very un-Daredevil-ish in, I mean, Daredevil doesn't usually have things of that outlandish in nature. Yeah, like magic happen. Now, I have never read Daredevil regularly. I've always thought, like, oh, he's cool. He's a cool guy to show up. But I don't think I've ever in my life picked up a Daredevil comic for an extended period of time.
Even like Todd Engel, after Innocenti's run, it was Bendis, and then Brubaker, and then Mark Waid, and then Charles Soule, and then Diggle was in there for about 12 issues. Shadowland, we don't like to talk about it, but it literally for the last 15 years, it has been one of the consistently strongest books on the shelves. It has never really dipped for more than 10 issues or so. But Brian, I don't know if you would like Daredevil consistently.
Yeah, it's probably not.
It is a darker corner of moral ambiguity that you tend to not enjoy for long periods of time in your comic book reading.
You're more mystical and magical, like a unicorn.
Also, I feel like we're armchair experting Brian's reading habits now. But I feel
absolutely we're mansplaining his reading.
I feel like you gravitate more towards the altruistic nature of heroism, right?
I do indeed.
It is like legacies and the epitomes of excellence, striving for. That is something that is appeals to you.
It does.
Daredevil is about
Or
the
just
opposite of
being
that.
already, embodying.
Yeah,
you know?
Daredevil is
Yeah.
essentially the opposite. How to do that and constantly fail at it while wrestling with faith and moral ambiguity and his whole
he's
setup
he's
is
super into faith. He's street
he's
level. Whereas
he's a
I prefer
vigilante lawyer
Yeah.
who beats the shit out of people, but is a practicing Catholic. Like, it's nothing but gray area the entire book at all times. And I don't know if you would feel satisfied by living in that for long periods of time.
Yeah. I mean, I never have had the desire to. You know, like I said, like I've read Daredevil comics or seen him show up, and I'm always like, oh, he's cool, you know. But the arcs of Daredevil that I've read have never made me want to go check out more Daredevil. He's not, you know, like I said, he's very street level. Also, there's nothing abstract or cosmic or you
might like Mark Waid's run though.
That's what I've heard, and that is probably the one that I was most tempted to pick up because everyone described it as swashbuckling. They said, that sounded like fun.
It's
and
really quite delightful.
Yeah. I remember. No, you know what? I guess I'm wrong. I did read Daredevil at one point at least because I remember stopping when
I remember hating it.
I just got incredibly bored with there was like 10 or 12 issues in a row of just him in the courtroom in the early 2000s.
That's Bendis, by the way.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm out. This is it. Yeah.
His secret identity got outed, and he literally sued everyone. So it was a legal drama for a while. Yeah,
courtroom drama for over a year. That was that for me. So I must have been reading it, and then decided to stop reading it.
Bringing it back, Rob, what did you think of this issue?
So I read this after I had already read, what the hell was it? The Superior 4. So the Devil's Reign was already kind of slathered into my head, and I just took it as this is what's going on in this world. Like honestly, I thought like Devil's Reign. I didn't even know what the hell Devil's Reign actually was. It was just, okay, Kingpin's taken over. Things are a little dark right now in the Marvel Universe. This was a perfect introduction. It introduced me to the character, introduced me to the event, and it just did it all in such a tight package. It was beautiful. It was really well done. It was a good #1 issue. It was a good different world for where Daredevil has been in the past. It was a page turner. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, this is definitely going to when Zdarsky's done with the book. It is definitely going to be a fondly remembered run, and I will absolutely, purchase it in oversized to stay on my shelf.
And I've been a Zdarsky fanboy since Sex Criminals, so he's rarely done wrong for me.
I think people are surprised at how effectively he handles this type of story because we all were introduced to him via comedy, right? Like Sex Criminals, Jughead, Howard the Duck. Like he was the subversive comedic guy, and then all of a sudden he's smacking you over the head with Daredevil. Like, okay.
Oh, see, I didn't know him as a comedic guy. I was really first exposed to him on the show here, this show. I forget what it was that we were at, but it was I forget if it was like more traditional superhero fare or
he
more
did
independent. Actually,
he did a Justice League miniseries that we talked about on the show.
Really? There was maybe it was that.
He did Spider-Man too.
He did do Spider-Man. We read Life Story, but that was a little after.
Well, before that though, he did Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man, good 20-something issue run on Spider-Man.
Okay. Did he do any independent stuff around the last couple of years?
I'm sure he did, other than Sex Criminals.
Sex Criminals, yeah. But that was a few years
ago. That was mostly his art and co-writing with Fraction. Like that was a touch more Fraction's baby than his.
Yeah, fair.
But yeah, he has proven himself a very versatile storyteller. and it's just, I don't know. You get to enjoy, like, it's a parasocial relationship with a lot of these writers and creators and storytellers. So you start to like actively cheer like they're your friend when like they show you something else in their toolbox. It's just like, good for you, Chip. I thought you were just the comedy guy. This is great. When in reality, that's probably just also very condescending. But whatever. The last book,
he'll be okay. He won't care.
yeah. I'm
You won't
sorry,
even know
Mr.
about
Dadarsky. So the last book we're going to talk about today is Detective Comics 1084. We are reading this because it's the second part of a 12-issue kind of story called Shadows of the Bat, which I still don't really like the title. That title, it's multiple
Wasn't
shadows,
that
one bat.
Shadows of the Bat was
Shadow of the Bat.
Shadow of the Bat. Although, if you have multiple lights on one thing, you do get multiple shadows sometimes.
Great.
You know,
awesome,
Yeah.
There you
cool.
go. Yeah.
But the first issue, I think all of us we agreed the first issue last week was stronger than we expected. And like, even though there was like some real dumb plot things, like why would you make Arkham Asylum a tower in the middle of the city? Whatever.
People have very short memories.
Yeah, it was mildly forgivable though. It was mildly forgivable though, because it was a solid Batman comic that didn't feature Batman at all. So it was like, okay, let's follow through with some of like a couple issues into this 12-issue thing and see what happens. So that's the preamble. Solicitations are as follows. Written by Marika Tamaki and Matthew Rosenberg, with art by Ivan Reis and Fernando Blanco. The Tower, Part 2. The mysteries of Dr. Weir, begin to where?
I was pronouncing it Weir also until they rhymed it with Bear in this issue.
Yeah.
Begin to unfold as a new doctor named Frau, because or Brow, Frau.
Yeah.
Joins
they also help us out with that one.
Joins the staff of Arkham Tower. The Bat family tries to figure out the best way to infiltrate the facility, but someone may have gotten the drop on them. Someone not unfamiliar with psychiatric facilities. One, Harleen Quinzel, better known to you, dear readers, as Harley Quinn. So, this is like a foundational issue. Not much happens other than table setting, which to me usually is the fastest way for me to drop a book. However, it's a weekly book, so I have to like reframe my brain into I'm not waiting a month to kind of start knocking down these dominoes they're setting up. So this is like a larger form versus function conversation for me. Like if it reads better in trade versus if it reads better in issues. Yeah. The publishing schedule does take into effect as to my patience as to where a story is going and the pacing of such. So the first issue was like, it was great. Like they were jumping forward and backwards in time. They were showing you the aftermath while also setting up the ordinary world of the story before it all going to shit. We don't know how it all goes to shit. But this halted that pace to slow down and explain to you in great detail, whether you like it or not, the ordinary world of this tower. All useful. Cool. Well done. But in contrast to the first issue that was just so quick and effective, it did feel like a wheel screech. I don't dislike anything that happened here, and it's done well for me. But if I was reading this in succession, it really would have felt jarring, like, poof. And my patience for it is more kind because I know that we're going to get another issue next week right away, like tomorrow. So I don't know, like this is a context. The context of how this is releasing and how I'm reading it makes me more forgivable about the things that I have problems with. If that makes sense.
It does.
But what did you guys think? Rob, you're first.
No baggage. So I honestly thought it was the start of the story because it seems like they kind of rushed you through the first issue of the present day and now they're taking you back in time. You can do that in the first issue as well. So I thought it was a good introduction to this Dr. Why or year art.
Wiry.
Wiry. Dr. Wiry.
Wiry. Yeah.
What's the deal with Oracle? Oracle's back in the chair again?
She is not paralyzed at the moment, I don't think. I think she's not Batgirl, but she's Oracle, but she can occasionally go into the field if necessary.
She's her her mobility is based off of an implant in her spine. I think it was during
New 52.
The Joker. No, yeah, that was that continuity, which is still current. But during the Joker War, he did something, and she's like on sketchy ground. So it still functions. She's still mobile, but it can't take that much beating. So she is very selective about when she goes out in the field as Batgirl. So she's kind of got a duality. So like she'll show up every once in a while in costume if she deems it necessary. But other than that, she's more of like a she feeds Stephanie and Cassandra information, and they are her pawns.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, Arkham Tower, it was a little silly. Fine, whatever. But other than that, it was a really solid introductory issue into this new Bat story. And I love the front cover. That's so cool.
You know what? I want to talk about, like, thank you for bringing that up, because I want to talk about how all of the covers for this are hyper photorealistic.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I love it.
It's disturbing.
Yeah, it takes me out. Like, what's the name of when people make comics out of photography? What is it like? Fumetti?
Yeah.
I always disliked it, and it gives me kind of like weird PTSD flashbacks of Fumetti. Like, I don't know. I know that these aren't just pictures. Like somebody actually did photorealistically paint that.
See, I think
it's something that I would pause if I was walking past it on a shelf. This is one I would say would break the sameness.
I think it's the next issue that is just and they may preview it at the end of this one. It's just a hyper extreme close up of Huntress and an actress portraying Huntress, and it's just like, I don't know. I'd rather see an artist rendition than a person, but that's just me. I don't know. It's not a deal breaker.
I think it's odd when the covers are like that and the interior is not like that. So
really, you haven't gotten over that one yet?
No, well, maybe odd isn't the right word, but it's a different kind of thing. You know what I mean? When the art is the same artist as the interior. Now, Fumetti, I always thought was a very interesting and sometimes cool thing, but never something that I would want to, read continuously. But yeah, it is to me still a bit, I don't know. It doesn't flow quite as well. Also, the subject of the cover being Harley Quinn, it's like they just wanted to have Harley Quinn on the cover of this book. And the person inside isn't Harley Quinn. It's somebody who thinks they're Harley Quinn, which is an interesting and kind of fun person to be in Arkham Asylum or Arkham Tower.
Arkham Basement.
Yeah. Why don't we take the place that people are constantly breaking out of on the outskirts of town and put it in Center City? It just blew up. Why don't we bring it a little closer? Yeah, I thought it is a weird choice for this issue. So you didn't read the last one, Rob, but like Noel was saying, the last one starts off almost without a beginning. It's the middle of the story. Like the Arkham Tower has already fallen, but like some shit's going down, and we don't know what it is. But I'm pretty sure it's all like on lockdown, but the people in there, I don't think they're inmates, but whomever they are, the one woman that you meet here with the purple hair, seems to be the focus of it, and they're out there killing people. Ware got thrown out of the building already and landed like 30 stories down. And and Nightwing and Cassandra and I think Batwoman are all in there. And they can't get a hold of Nightwing for a little while. It's like right in the midst of the action. And then in this one, it's like a flashback that weirdly says Arkham Tower Day 12. I went back as we were talking about it, kind of thinking that it said Arkham Tower minus 12 days, like 12 days until kind of thing. But it doesn't do that. It's just, I guess, the 12th day that Arkham Tower has been in operation. And then you get this story. I was a little disappointed by the ending that Ware is not such a great guy. And I was disappointed by finding out that Ware was not such a great guy, mostly because it was like, I kind of figured he wasn't from the first issue. You know what I mean? So then when we find out here, it's like, oh, I was kind of holding out hope that he actually was altruistic, because that would be different for somebody running Arkham Asylum.
Well,
you know what I mean?
But that's as a kid, right?
Yeah, he could have gotten. It's true. It's just that's the kind of story beat that usually telegraphs that he's a psychotic.
He's dead as far as
probably
maybe not.
Yeah, I'm wondering if he. Yeah, exactly. Or that's like a Ware clone.
Yeah, Rob, at the end of issue 1, Dr. Ware is thrown through a window at the top of the skyscraper and just like splats.
Yeah.
You see him splat.
Well, you see the aftermath, and then they show a close-up of his hand with, I think it's his ring finger that's missing.
No.
Oh.
So who knows?
So he falls out of the building and just his finger pops off?
Yes. Yeah. Or it's severed. Whichever.
Yeah. Physics. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now, who knows? Maybe he is actually dead and just things will be revealed about him, and that's how he plays a role. It could be.
It's so telegraphed, especially in that conversation with Batwoman. It's like, this guy's weird.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned that Batman doesn't show up at all in issue 1, which you and I think JD as well thought was very cool. Not something that I remember ever seeing before, where Batman isn't in a Batman book but he's not presumed dead or anything. You know what I mean? And it's everybody else in this big Gotham event.
I feel like Detective did that for a while, and I want to say, was it right after New 52? There was a period where Detective was Batman without Batman.
I'm pointing at it. It's right over there. It was Bucoletto. Yeah, it was Manipul and Bucoletto. After Flash, they did Detective for a while, and it was about the precinct for the most part. It was like the main character was what's his name? Bullock.
Was he?
Yeah.
But not like the Bat family, right? It was this is a Gotham PD story.
It was basically a Gotham PD story that was like Bat family adjacent, and then Tinian took over during Rebirth Detective Comics, and Batman showed up at the beginning, but it was basically like this, where it was he essentially gave Batwoman the keys to the kingdom and was just like, I would like you to build a team and train all these,
that was it. Yeah.
Various sidekicks.
Yeah.
And they, like the book was basically a Batwoman book, and Batman would show up like an extended cameo here and there.
Right.
But he is straight up off the board. Like he's in Europe, right?
Yeah, he's dealing with something in Europe.
He's gone.
And actually, the reason that I brought it up is I didn't think of this while I was reading it, but when you mentioned it during this review, you do actually see him in this comic. It's a flashback, and it's a single page, and it's just like history of Mr. Freeze, and it doesn't break the coolness of what that is doing in this story. But now thinking about it, it's like, well, maybe it kind of would have been cool if they only ever talked about him.
Yeah, also too the backup, the Matt Rosenberg and Fernando Blanco backup.
I didn't read it.
read the backup next time. Only
All right.
because
All right.
it's very they're strong. Like it's just a continuation
It
from
looks
last week's
cool.
where
This
it's
art is really good.
in the first issue they introduced this guy Nero the 17th or something or 8, I don't know.
14th, I think.
Yeah. Who wanted to kill the mayor and he's rehabilitated. The backup was explicitly like kind of his inciting incident as a child and then being put in the system. And then this was a follow-up of he's in the system and, you know, brush his shoulders with Bruce Wayne, Batman first, and then Bruce Wayne. And it appears as though this whole backup as it goes is going to almost be like a retroactive profile on how anybody can end up being a villain in Gotham just by circumstance.
I was wondering
Which
who
is
this kid
fascinating.
was. Thank you. That helps.
But yeah, this was strong. I think this is going to read really good altogether.
Rice's art is gorgeous.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, it's just beautiful. Yeah.
Hey, the sky is also blue. He is always good.
Yeah. It really carries a book of mostly people talking to each other.
Very.
Yeah.
And he has. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I read this right after Bloodstone, which had horrific art, so that was it was a palate cleanser.
God bless you for reading the entirety of the Dropbox.
Yeah, well, you know.
Well, I guess you didn't see the list Noel sent out a couple of days. Why would you have been paying attention?
That was a couple days ago.
Right.
Yeah.
I also read the contents completely. It's the terrible chosen job of like I'll read as much as humanly possible and let you guys know what's straight up landmines and what might be kind of like interesting conversations.
You definitely picked the best ones for the show. The two we're skipping were definitely the two weakest in the conversation.
Mucho gusto. And we're skipping those explicitly so we could talk about.
JD says Nero the 19th. Actually,
I thought it was a larger number than that.
Yeah.
We're skipping those two books so we can spend a little time talking about Peacemaker, the television show that premiered on HBO Max last week. It airs every Thursday. They dropped the first 3 episodes in one chunk. It is an 8-episode run, and subsequent episodes will come out every Thursday. Written and directed by James Gunn. Yes, he wrote all 8 episodes and directed 5 of the 8. So the ones that we've seen so far were he directed, exclusively him. And for those of you who don't know, it is a continuation of the recent Suicide Squad movie. We are seeing what happens to Peacemaker, John Cena's character, after the events of that movie. This show is a giant swing tonally if you're not familiar with James Gunn's previous work in movies such as Super and a little bit of Slither. If you're familiar with those movies, it's like, oh, I see what you did there. And for me, that's just my fucking love. That's my love language. I adore the shit out of this show and the things I just mentioned. And I'm having a grand old time. What do you guys think?
I think it's great. Yeah, it's. I enjoyed Suicide Squad. I hesitate to say more than I thought I would because him being the director and writing, I was like, it's probably pretty good. But even so, more than I thought I would. Like, it was really good. There is a little question as to why DC doesn't do its more major characters while meanwhile doing Suicide Squad and then transitioning into the Peacemaker TV show. But it's awesome. I mean, it's great. It's a fun show. The Peacemaker has an interesting complexity in this show where he's, apparently a giant marauding jackass, but he actually has these feelings and a heart. Yeah, exactly. He thinks he's doing the right thing. Vigilante is a lot of fun, as are the team that he is with. So yeah,
it's smart how they make his broness seem cute and adorable because it's so juxtaposed to Robert Patrick's complete hate mongering and complete his father's complete neo-Nazi attitude towards everything. Anything John Cena does, even though it's a little dense, it's a little archaic, it's almost kind of adorable, right? Because he does have just those moments when he's so disgusted by his father's attitude. You go, okay, he's a good guy. Yeah. He's just like Johnny Lawrence. He's trapped in 1987, right?
He's got kind of almost a wide-eyed innocence for a repeated killer.
It's he's likable because they make the effort of juxtaposing his actions against more horribleness, right? Like with his father. And they do the work of actually they don't go out of their way to try and make him redeemable so much as make you question or understand why he thought that was the right choice.
I don't expect him to change during the course of this show. I just expect to watch him do his thing. He's a brutal killer that I, in the real world, would probably be like, I wouldn't give him as much leeway. But, and
I do. Story. And for me, like, spoilers for the Suicide Squad, that movie, I loved it, but the part of it that there's one part of the movie that actively kind of disturbed me, not because like, oh my God, they died. It was emotionally effective was when he killed Rick Flag.
Yeah.
Because these are two heroes in the movie coming to blows, which we see in comic books and comic movies all the time. The same team fights and then you just kind of figure it out. No, he kills them. And then
he's also Peacemaker's hero. I think he really looked up to Rick Flag.
And Rick Flag's last words were, "Peacemaker, what a joke," which still resonate in this show. So it started very wisely. It started the character at lower than base level, like a giant hole to dig his way out of, and it effectively even bothers him for the first time in his whole life. Yeah. So there's just like with a lot of James Gunn stuff, it on the surface it is bug nuts, glam metal, vulgar, gross, immature, but there's somehow pathos and genuine emotion and effective. It's shocking. It's shocking how he's able to mix genres so effectively.
Gunn's biggest trait is he knows how to integrate everything into it, every human emotion. The music choices. I mean, he always has an amazing soundtrack as a backdrop to everything. I have watched that intro probably 100 times. I can't stop watching it. It's. I know we're having a back and forth about it on the group chat, but I mean, I YouTube it just when I want to feel happy. I'll just pull up the Peacemaker intro.
I thought I would skip it by the third episode, but I do not skip it.
Yeah, I kept watching it too. As much as, I like the ability, regardless of what James Gunn desires, I like the ability to skip by intros. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because they're not all as good as this one.
No, but I think he means thematically. Like we're so predisposed to just skip as soon as the button is available.
Yes.
But what if we didn't want to skip? Not I'm going to make you look at these people's names. It's like, what if I wanted to watch it again?
Yeah. The tweet I was referencing was basically people work really hard on these shows. So I want to give them credit. So what you're talking about, just that instinct to immediately hit the.
Oh yeah. Whenever, I liked it when TV shows for a while were doing very, very short. They would just kind of throw up the name of the show. And then there would be names while the show was going in the
just a title card. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And once I've already seen one, I think I said on the chat, I like to watch whatever show. I like to watch the intro the first time, and then that's good enough for me usually. And And I go to IMDb if I want to know who had something to do with the show. So this is now this extra media kind of thing, which didn't used to exist at all.
It's also, if you've like, I'm a fan of James Gunn. If you've seen his other stuff, especially first of all, he's very big on opening title sequences and credits,
and he does them well. Like, he does cool shit. Yeah.
For him, speaking for someone else, it's not just introduction. He also captures the whole thing tonally with his opening credit sequence. And he's done that consistently. Like the first Guardians of the Galaxy. It's big and massive and dark, and then all of a sudden you're hearing a Motown tune and an idiot dancing through it.
Yeah.
So you immediately understand the tone of this entire movie. Doubles up again on Guardians 2, where massive battle is happening behind this cute little fucker who's dancing around. But more so than anything else, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Super with Rainn Wilson. You've never seen it, Rob?
Yeah. No, I have. Yes.
The opening credit sequence is animated, and it's a whole musical number where animated versions of the main characters in the movie are literally doing like chorus line dances, crudely animated. And the way it ends is the song ends and they're all standing there in poses, and the animated figures start breathing heavy like they just performed. They're like for like 5 seconds. And he redoes that joke in the Peacemaker opening credit sequence. Even the bird is like
eagerly. I love it.
It's such a good joke, and it's this subtle way of breaking the fourth wall that speaks to the theme and the tone of the show that doesn't actually speak to the tone of the show or to the show itself.
Well, also the people who are in it. There's all the main characters, and then there's like the guy that he runs into in the first episode who
all
may or
may
not show up again. Yeah.
What's her name's wife is doing the same dance moves, but she's throwing birds in too.
Yeah.
Like there's so much. The show is great. It's overall, but like I think you could literally do a masterclass on just the opening credit sequence.
Yeah, I mean, there's layers to it, and I think that speaks to that's James Gunn. I think they should give this guy a swing at the whole DCEU. Get it out from under the Snyders. And
he
gonna take a swing.
Whether you like his stuff or not, you cannot deny that he is incredibly emotional about everything he does. Right? Like he gave a shit about the Suicide Squad. He gave a shit about Ratcatcher.
Right.
Like emotionally gave a shit about her and him.
You guys ever see PG porn?
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, Brian, when you get a chance, Google James Gunn PG porn. And even that has an emotional level to it. I mean,
it's so earnest.
The Charlie Brown one gives you like almost chills, right? Just, I mean, even, before there's always that kind of twist moment to each of those, but basically it's porn without the sex. It's everything's in a porn movie, but sex.
Yeah. It's a bunch of like short films that are set up in Punchline, and it's just in the world. Like it takes porn tropes and turns it into like punchlines. I loved it. I can't wait. This is a weekly watch. Yeah,
bring it on. Yeah.
And he currently he's filming Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and the Guardians Holiday Special at the same time. And I mean, even though it's hard to judge whether it's a weird year, it's hard to judge whether the Suicide Squad and or this are successful because box office isn't a measurement anymore, especially because HBO did day and date for all of their new releases. So, I mean, from what we understand, DC / Warner Brothers is in love with him, and he's already developing some other stuff. But whether it's a scoping nature, I don't know. Like, would I love to see him do Superman? Fuck yes. But would I also love to see him do like Batmite? Yeah, let's do it. I don't care.
Yeah. Which seems like more the kind of thing that he would do.
You know what? I bet you there's a solid as hell Superman movie in him too.
Oh, for sure. I think he would.
Yeah.
He would do a good job. I mean, the DC could really use a person with vision for the line.
They need their own Feige. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, also somebody that understands the core emotional value of each character, right?
Right.
So it's not everything through my prism. It's what is the emotional core value of this character, and then tell that story. It's not everything's dark, so how do we make Superman dark, and how do we make this dark? It's Superman is bright, so let's do this with him. Not like it's.
Well, I was always
it's chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah. I was always so impressed with the Flash on CW because Arrow was very successful, and they didn't just make the Flash like Arrow. They were like, instead of trying to replicate Arrow's success by doing an Oliver Queen-like version of the Flash, we'll try to replicate Arrow's success by bringing what has made this long-running character successful to this new media, which is something that Marvel has done. You know, Marvel's, I mean, there's a certain similarity to the Marvel movies, and none of them have that different of a tone from each other. But they all are very true to the core of their different characters.
Yeah, I would say for the Marvel movies, there's a margin of error. Like they all exist in the same world. There's a margin. There's like a 20% left or right that you can go in regards to tone, and then they all mimic some other genre. So you've got the spy thriller, but it's within the Marvel tone, plus or minus 20%. You've got the monster movie, Marvel tone, plus minus 20. So like they at least have some sort of formula that kind of creates consistency, but offers, limited motion within a sandbox to make it yours or towards something. So some people probably consider that limiting. I think it's kind of cool. I do think that creativity thrives with limitations.
Yeah.
So I do think that people like James Gunn took the limitations and created something new, whereas people like, the directors of Captain Marvel, already forgot their names, liked it a lot, solid movie, very by the numbers. So they did not do anything really new within the sandbox. They did a really good version of the sandbox. So it's like I think it could be good and it could be fine. Incredible Hulk sandbox.
They also do the character very well. You know what I mean? They're not trying to do their director's version of that character. Is how it has always seemed to me that, a lot of, especially in the older days of comic movies, but up through like Christopher Nolan's Batman and what may or may not be Matt Reeves' Batman, as good as some of those are, they are Christopher Nolan's idea of what Batman is. It's not just Batman. You know what I mean?
I think that's plus or minus, where DC has been creator driven in regards to their movies, whereas Marvel is very house driven. They've agreed upon the established rules before handing over the keys, whereas at WB it's just like, here's the keys.
Well, I feel like also, like, for instance, Christopher Nolan was like, what if Batman existed in the real world? Seemed to be his driving force. And I don't want him to ever meet Superman, kind of thing. What's that?
I said it's his own world.
Exactly, right. It's not Batman from the comics in a movie the way that, like, Captain America, there are differences from the comics continuity, very much feels like the Captain America that you might read a comic about. And that also helps do different characters in different ways rather than Batman is very successful. Let's do other dark movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I think all these guys were stealing from the past, right? I mean, everything we've talked about so far, Snyder, Nolan, they've all lifted from everything that's been around since the
Sure.
dark age of comics started in '86.
Mm-hmm.
Gunn's taking it all in new directions, right? He's almost doing that sort of, I don't want to say mockery of the genre, but certainly.
I think it's a loving tongue-in-cheek kind of like we're all having fun with this together.
I think you nailed it. I think you inadvertently nailed it though, Rob. I think it has to do with their influences and the Bible which they choose to read from, right? So Nolan and Snyder decided to choose to read exclusively from like the Frank Miller Bible, whereas Gunn is more interested in the Ostrander Bible and the 70s Bible of the characters and modernizing them, as opposed to the true version is this rainy day version, right? It's just their sources that they're choosing to curb from. Whereas converse or adversely over at Marvel, before they invite filmmakers in, they have an idea of the stories and or characterizations that they want to explore to fit. It's just it's
well, they have one guy in charge. I mean,
there's a consistency
and a guy who understands their properties.
And even when Snyder was in charge, he's we always want to lay all the blame at Snyder's feet, but Snyder has a lot of meddling from the parent company that Feige has not had. Right? They've just let Feige be because he knows comics, where WB has never had that faith with any of this. And we talk about being too close to comics, everything. I would talk to these creators during that time. A certain guy whose name rhymes with Schmef Schmons, who asked me not to, put a lot of stuff in the public eye, but a lot of these people would have some cathartic laments to me. When I kind of ask, what the fuck, or I would just drop a shitty interview on Ain't It or a shitty review on Ain't It Cool, and they would write out and go, yeah, I just don't know why I feel like I need to tell you what's happening behind the scenes. And 9 times out of 10, Warner Brothers suits that didn't understand a goddamn thing about comic books, trying to interject and slather tons of demographics on top and psychographics and user testing groups and blah, 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 blah. Not baggage that Marvel has had. And I think finally Warner Brothers has woken up and said, we've got a genius. He understands comics. Let's just let him make a damn show and let him make a movie.
It hasn't financially paid off for them yet. So that's what makes me kind of scared. Like there are no, and this is probably, it's getting late. This is probably the last point I want to make, and then I'll give it to you guys. But there's been no traditional return of investment shown to the old heads at Warner Brothers yet in regards to James Gunn playing in the Forum. Suicide Squad did not make a normal return on investment when it comes to box office receipts.
He must be comparing that to other things from this time, though.
But
what's the streaming revenue and the basically your retention and churn is what you're looking at with streaming.
Yeah, it's a different model, and some of these people that are in charge were expecting one thing and got something else, and you can argue all day long as to why and or how it may be more successful than the traditional model, vices, whatever. But are they going to be patient enough to find out, or are they going to reactively move like they have in the past multiple times, a la Snyder's bullshit and Joss Whedon being pulled in and great ideas in development that are just like ripped away. Like it.
Now it is
Warner Brothers has never
totally
been
different people now, right? Like
I mean, sure,
but
it's shifted like 5 times. It's not, and the thinking has not changed yet. So what I'm saying is like, here's hoping that they have the patience to see if this has legs, qualitatively as well as quantitatively. Or if it's just like, oh, it's not working, quick move. And
I
it's
think
another
the Flash movie
version.
Will be a big determinant, right, of like what goes forward. If that's successful and depending on what it is and what it's like and that.
There's cool stuff in the works, right? So like the Flash movie, the Batgirl movie looks rad.
Yeah.
22.
Blue Beetle, I'm actually very excited for.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Although they seem to be shying away from their major character. You know, like Batgirl instead of Batman. Superman is nowhere to be seen.
Oh, I mean,
you know?
Batman's got his own movie. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but he's not in. You know, he's not like in their larger universe.
What? Oh, a shared universe?
Yeah.
I
I
mean-
think Matt Reeves is like separate from.
But that'll be
whatever
its
else.
own shared universe because there's like
I
3
know.
other TV shows and movies that are being
Yeah.
developed based off of that. They're doing the same thing that they're doing with their comic book line. It's a
Yeah.
shit ton of miniseries that'll all be kind of connected if they want to be or not.
Hmm.
And I'm fine with that. Just tell a good story. To your point, I don't know if I want a Batgirl that is, I know this is going to sound stupid, just like semantically. I don't necessarily want a Batgirl story that is contingent on Batman being there to be good.
No,
You know?
No, that's not what
Yeah.
I mean at all.
No,
I mean,
I
like,
know, but I don't want
yeah.
that to be mixed. I don't need Batman to show up in the Batgirl movie. 2
It's
lines,
gotta be,
No.
reference,
for the
we're out.
newbies. For the newbies, he has to be referenced, right?
Reference, sure, but
Yeah.
he does not need to be like a mentor that shows up every 3rd scene. Like,
Right.
No, and
Off
he
the
isn't
board.
traditionally in her story anyway. Like she operates independently of him for a while in the beginning.
yeah, but I
mean like where's Batman at all in the shared universe that they're doing? Like I would love both to be around.
Would you see the Matt Reeves Batman and Peacemaker? I mean, that's.
I'm very excited about the Matt Reeves Batman. I
think it looks awesome.
I loved his last 3 movies. I thought the Planet of the Apes movies were fucking fantastic. So,
although you still can't see that bat on the costume. It always, I don't know why they always go all black with the Batman movie costumes.
It makes more sense.
I mean, it does if you are actually dressing up as Batman.
Yeah.
But I want to see the black and the gray. Nah,
I'm okay.
And you can see the bat symbol. Cool.
I don't think it looked great when Affleck did it and they shied
really?
away from it.
That was my favorite version of Batman on screen. I got to tell you, like
if we're talking about just that fight sequence, it was fucking great. I loved it.
And the costume, I mean, is
I don't. I think I was just I didn't. He couldn't turn his head, which I think was a regression, and I don't need the cowl to have emotions. He had a fucking brow and a grimace sculpted into it. I was like, no, I think that's silly.
Not as bad as nipples.
No,
no
I mean
nipples.
That's the low point. This is obviously above that. It's, but anyway, guys, I think we've overstayed our welcome.
Let's end on nipples. Yeah.
Let's end on boobies.
As I often do.
Speaking of boobies, Peacemaker, HBO Max every Thursday. Check it out.
Cool.
So like and subscribe. Write about us in your diary if you like what we've done here. But when you do write about us in our diary, do that thing where you write your name first and then our last name and then your first name and our first name and your last name and stuff, and just like we'll see what it looks like. Like really test it out.
Or hyphenate.
Hyphenate. Little hearts and circles and swirls. We'll do a mash book together.
2 of us take both of our names.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I have tried to change my name twice now from Bartocci Patey Lieb Patey. Never correct you.
I don't know why. Yeah.
Make it an acronym, LPD.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Don't forget, we are here every Monday night at around 9 p.m. We're going to talk about comics stuff. Email us, cultpopgo@gmail.com. Leave comments. Join the conversation. We're here for our health and sanity, but you might as well get something out of it also. Rob, thank you for joining us this week. Hopefully it's the first of many. Brian,
yes.
I love you as a person.
Thank you.
That's all.
That. Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you guys later. Thank you. Have a good night.
Oh, Rob's out.